Right, thank you very much indeed. Good afternoon to you all.
Thank you very much.
It's my pleasure this afternoon to be chairing the panel in the absence of our Chairman, Councillor Maguire, who's away at the moment. In the usual fashion, as soon as the Chairman changes, it seems so do the people to your left and right. And on this occasion, I'd like to welcome Paulina, who's taking over from Alex Daines, and Hayley on our left-hand side, who is Gary Goose for the day. It would be advantageous also, I think, just to quickly whip around, especially for Paulina, who's taken over this role, to get to know us individually. If we could just go around and introduce ourselves, starting with Ben.
Starting with me, Ben Shelton, South Cambs District Council.
I thought you go that way round.
Councillor Martin Curtis, I'm here as a Fenton District Council representative, but I'm also leader of the District Council.
Great.
I'm Sarah Ferguson, I'm a Service Director of Children's Services and County Council here as well.
Tom Hunt is Cambridgeshire District Council.
Nikki Howard, Acting Chief Finance Officer to the Police and Crime Commission.
Brian Ashton, Deputy Police Commissioner.
Graham Bryant, Police and Crime Commission.
Councillor Barry Scott, Cabinet Advisor to Michael Walsh, Community Distribution and Commission.
David Speaker, City Councillors, substituting for governments.
Councillor Nazim Khan, East West Khan.
And right, that's excellent. Right, so we'll move to item 1 on the agenda. Apologies for absence. We have.
Thank you, Chair. Apologies for absence from Councillor Maguire, Councillor Cameron, Councillor Elsie, and Councillor substituting, Councillor Blue, and Laura.
Very much. Item 2, declarations of interest. Are there any pecuniary and non-pecuniary to receive this afternoon? Thank you very much. That moves us now to item 3, the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of November 2013, on pages 3 to 8. There are some actions on page 7, and we've also received, or should have received updates on the response to an action from a question posed at last time's meeting regarding a process for reporting on road traffic collisions. Any comments on those responses or actions? Okay, so therefore is it your wish I sign those as a true record? Thank you very much. Take that as a yes. Yes. Thank you. Item 4 is public questions. We have been submitted with a question or a number of questions this afternoon, which I've allowed for consideration by Mr. Taylor, who frequents us on a regular basis with his camera, etc. Richard, if you'd like to present your questions to us, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, I'm Richard Taylor. I'm a Cambridge resident, and I decided to use the public speaking slot at today's meeting to raise some concerns that I've had when I've been observing the way the police and crime panel has been operating so far, and to make some suggestions about what you could do in the future. I've made a written submission with questions which contains references. So really, what I'm here to do in person, I think, is just sort of to colour in what I've submitted in writing. So one of the things that I've been particularly concerned about is the way that the panel has allowed the Commissioner to decide which decisions he submits for scrutiny. And he has only been submitting those which I think are the statutory decisions which he has to submit, and those which he considers are of significant public interest. Those are the same criteria that he uses to publish the decisions on his website. And what I'd like to suggest is that the panel gets a little bit more proactive about finding out what other decisions the Commissioner has taken. And I'd like to see the panel working together with the Commissioner and discussing where it might be appropriate to bring other decisions before the panel. I've included in my submission a list of decisions which the Commission has clearly taken but haven't been put to the panel. So one of those was the decisions which he's told the media he's taken around the non-emergency call answering performance. He's told the media that he took decisions on that within a few days of coming into office, and I think there's suggestions that he's been then taking further decisions on that subject, and yet they haven't come to. So I think that's one example of an area where I would have liked to have seen the panel getting those decisions, getting the details of what the options were, what he's decided to do, what the impact was, what follow-up decisions he's made, and to scrutinise them. Another example would be all those decisions which would have faced the Commissioner as he came into office, as he set up his operation. For example, deciding that the Business Coordination Board, his key decision-making body, will meet in secret behind closed doors. And one of the things that I think I've lost as someone who tries to look at the way that my local police force is being run with the transition from a police authority to police commissioner is notice in advance of potential changes to policies before decisions on them are taken. And there are lots of other setting up decisions which the Commission clearly would have taken, which I think it would have been appropriate for the panel to consider. For example, he's attempted to pursue a policy of making himself independent from the police, so he set himself up in Camborne, but how effective has that been when, for example, his emails are still going through the police systems, for example, or if he's using, as appears to be the case, I don't know because you haven't done the scrutiny that I can point to, that he's got a chief finance officer from the police who's brought with him today, for example. Some of the other decisions that he's made include all the decisions relating to what he publishes on his website, what he includes in his spending data that he publishes, what he includes in his events information. So just the total of what's included in the transparency information which he publishes. He's also made a lot of decisions about where the operational versus strategic boundary lies. I've given you an example of when there was a major strategic change to policing in Cambridgeshire while the Commissioner was in office, when frontline officers started being armed with tasers, non-firearms officers started being armed with tasers. The Commissioner refused to comment on the grounds that it was an operational issue. The Chief Constable actually refused to comment as well. He said that he wasn't well informed enough on the issue to comment. So we had no leadership there from either side at the top of the police. And there are lots of decisions which I think the panel should get into.
Richard, can you be more specific about the questions you want to ask rather than sort of thinking out?
Well, I don't actually want to raise questions. What I wanted to do is come here and raise some concerns and make some suggestions. I've had to format my submission in the format of questions because that's the way in which the panel allows the public. But I'll certainly be much more rapid if you'd like.
Thanks, that'd be great.
Okay. So those are some examples of the decisions which I think could have been brought to the panel. I'd like to see the panel getting brought to it. I've also commented on the Police and Crime Commission's diary, which has been released recently in response to a Freedom of Information Act request. I think that's something else you could scrutinise. It appears that he's only working a 3-day week, and he's also spending a lot of time with the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners. In 1 week, he was only left with 1 day to work on Cambridge. So that's certainly something which I think you should look into, and also look into how his office is supporting his national role and whether that is appropriate. The diary also doesn't correspond exactly with the events list on the website, so what's being published there, and some things are not in the diary or the events list on the website. For example, his attendances at council meetings, which have not been widely publicised. I've also made some comments on the accuracy of some of the statements the Commission has made to the panel on eSINs, the data sharing website. What he said has been very different to what the Cambridge Community Safety Partnership have been told. The Commissioner has told you here that it only tells you whether a person has been in contact with an agency or not. However, the Community Safety Partnership in Cambridge are insistent that it's much more detailed information is getting shared on that website. He also told you about Alert. He described a system which it sounded as if it was going to give excerpts from the police log in near real time, almost comprehensively. He said it was very different from e-cops, but it turns out that it's
It's just no questions.
No, I completely agree with you.
I think you should rule out all. There's no questions in confidence at all.
Well, what I was going to do, Councillor Curtis, is at the end just ask you whether you share any of my concerns and whether you'd be prepared to act on them. But I completely agree that I've phrased my submission in a way that
Well, Richard, any of your concerns? Because obviously we've got them in writing, which we appreciate. And obviously the questions are: does the panel share my concerns? Will the panel take any action in light of what I've said, suggested, and made? Are there any comments from the panel members?
think my comment, Chair, would be that I think I agree with some of the comments that have been alluded to, that I think it's a very lengthy submission, so therefore makes it difficult for us really in the time that we had to look at it in detail. I'm a bit concerned that if you've obviously had these concerns for some time, that you've waited 12 months to bring them to the panel, and actually if you brought them in stages, it would have allowed us to respond more appropriately. I think, if I'm honest, I think the tone of it, I feel uncomfortable with the tone of it, but when I look in detail, some of it I have researched and I've looked on the websites that you referred to, and I don't necessarily agree with the conclusion that you have drawn. So when you talk about the Warwickshire Police and Crime Commissioner having 139 decisions scrutinised, when I looked this morning, a number of those decisions were Police and Crime Commissioner had an update on such and such a project and was satisfied with progressing satisfactorily. Now, we could sit here and talk about semantics about whether Sir Graham should bring those sorts of things to the panel. I think it's splitting hairs. That said, I think there are one or two points in here that I think maybe do require further scrutiny. I think it's unfortunate that they have possibly been lost in a very lengthy document.
I think it is difficult to respond to everything that Richard has raised, but I do think that there's a strong case that we should move on as a panel to some more focused exercises in proper scrutiny that we lead. I think when I read that, I didn't know actually that the Commissioner had declined the opportunity for scrutiny in some respect in the Cambridgeshire County Council. I don't know anything about that, but it does point up that we are the only place, effectively, where this has to happen. And there are some serious, some serious changes, some serious decisions, and they bear deep examination. And whether it's the call handling, which suggests itself actually first, because it was one of the first declarations of change that was made. Maybe we should contemplate what is our agenda to spend some time not going through the structured agenda like we have today, but to go through a sort of an issue-based agenda where we sit down and talk nothing about that issue, we decide who we want to talk to and the questions we want to ask, really go from beginning to end on the subject. For me, that is what scrutiny ought to be about, and I'm missing it so far.
Any others?
Yeah, I am concerned about this submission, and I think part of it is that what could be some very, very good and interesting challenges have been clouded in actually something that's far too long and complex, and actually the opening comment, which was that, not quite right what the saying was, but very similar. He says that he believes the Commission is only publishing statutory guidance and those of public significance or something along those lines. Well, actually, that's what I'd expect him to publish, and no more, no less, because otherwise he's not going to be able to walk down the street without having to publish things and have any discussion without having to publish things. I know, as a leader of a county council, that if we had to do that, we'd spend all the time publishing things. Probably want to know the major significance of what. I take that point about, and I absolutely take the point about whether we should find some areas where we need to scrutinise and get deeper in. I absolutely agree with that. But what we need to be challenging as a panel is not to say he should publish every single decision, but that we should look at the impact of what the Commissioner is doing and make decisions on what we should scrutinise and where we should go in depth, based on areas where we don't think the impact is being made that we would expect. And some of the things are really, really difficult for me to comprehend. The notion that he's spending too much time with the Association of Police and Crime Commissioners, as an example. I know that those national organisations and the knowledge and the work with them adds significant value to the work you do at a local level. And so to say he mustn't do that actually means that it will harm his ability to deliver in his role that he has for Cambridgeshire. So I have some real concerns about, you know, this could have been dealt with a lot better by being a lot more focused on what we felt are real significant issues, instead of being clouded with a lot of you are minor stuff that are not the responsibility of this panel. But I also take on board that issue of scrutiny that we should think about and say, okay, where is it we don't feel the Police and Crime Commissioner is having the impact it should, and should we get deeper into those issues? And I take that point.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you, Chair. The key for me is that decisions that come before us, we need to know when key decisions are being made. And that's the thing that I'm particularly interested in, is key decisions that will affect our residents. So I want to know when key decisions are going to be made and what those key decisions are, and any influence or scrutiny that we can add to them. Now, non-key decisions, there are many of them. That doesn't necessarily mean that we shouldn't be made aware of them, but we need to know anything emerging from them that could become a key decision at a later point if it transpires to be needed to have that scrutiny. So there is a level. We don't need to know everything, but we need to know enough to us as elected members and representatives of our community to form a judgment on the issues that are made before us. Thank you.
Okay. Any others? Thank you very much.
Chair,
Certainly.
there was a bit of consensus in
Yeah.
what people said about getting to more focused scrutiny exercise. I wonder,
And having given
When
the
can we do that?
opportunity, I'll come on to
Sorry.
that. Thank you, Councillor. I think that there are some points in here, and I think there's some generic points which are valid, and I think they have been picked up around the room in terms of us becoming a more focused scrutiny panel. So we actually focus on decisions that are being made and how they impact on the general public, because actually, as a politically accountable body, that's what a scrutiny panel does. And so I think that there is a strong feeling around the table that we should be doing more of that. What we've got to do is, I think, go back with officers and work out a process whereby we can pick up threads of emerging things, like a scrutiny panel does, like a scrutiny manager does within a council structure, where they look at the emerging policies, the emerging things that are happening, and they feel they pluck out things that need to go on the agenda for further scrutiny. It also allows, where you have a decisions digest might be a good way of doing it. I know we use one as a council, whereby the decision digest of the decisions that have been made and the policies that have been made over a specific month are presented to the panel, and then they can decide which parts of those they can go into more depth. But again, I think you can only get that if you have obviously more detailed information, as we sometimes get. In terms of some of the things in here, the Commissioner's diary, that's not, frankly, our concern. That's a politically accountable thing, and it is up to the electorate if they feel that that's the case, and not a scrutiny panel to all intents and purposes. In terms of first year spending, we know that we have on a number of occasions had detailed information of budgetary updates at this panel, and we've got another one today with the precepts. So I think we've had it 4 over the last year in terms of budgetary updates. So that one's covered on that. What I would ask, if there's anything in here that is specific to the day-to-day Commissioner's work, if you'd be willing just to give a written submission to Mr Taylor about some of these concerns that are outside really the sort of things that we should be looking at, which are more strategically based.
I'm more than happy to do that.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you. All right. Thank you, Mr Taylor. Thank you. Right, moving on to item 5, the decisions of the Commissioner, pages 9 to 20. So great. Page 9. Would you like me to run through them? See on page 9 there, key issues, dating on the 25th of November. We did this page by page, it's probably easier if there's any specifics that you'd like to raise with the Commissioner. Page 9.
On page 9, create Peace and Crime Commission Youth Fund. This is something that's concerned me for some time, and we've actually discussed this, and that is helping to keep youth out of trouble. And it's a very wise investment. And we found that we had funds within the police that had been mounting up through the sale of property that no one had claimed, and I thought it would be useful to use that. And what we've done is to engage with the Cambridgeshire Community Foundation, which I think is a very good operation, and to give them £40,000, which is going to be each year, to ask for projects from within the county, right way across, for youngsters that will enable them to bring youth together to do something useful. And the idea is they can claim up to £2,000. We're still holding on to this, although they're going to administer it for us. What they will do is they will look at the suggestions, pick out the good ones, and give myself and the Chief Constable a list of those causes. We will then tick off the ones we think are worth having. There's been very good response to this, particularly from youth organisations, because I'm hoping it will help. I think we're probably going to get snowed under to start with, but that's a good thing because we can actually drive it forward a bit more. So that's the first decision we've made, and that's something which I hold a lot on actually trying to reduce crime, and that's where my crime commissions have.
Certainly, David.
Thank you. Thanks, through you. When it says Cambridgeshire Community Foundation, does that include Peterborough, or has that got another?
Well, unless something's happened, Cambridgeshire, Peterborough's in Cambridgeshire, so the answer yes.
Ah, okay. I was supposed to be separate, but never.
No.
That's fine. Okay.
You always do.
And I've got at lengths to make sure that we're very inclusive as far as Peterborough is concerned.
It's just like our passport.
White too.
Yeah.
Well, we've already thrown a few funds in that direction to you anyway.
Okay.
Some good operations happening in Peterborough for young people.
Good. Thank you.
If Jason had his way, I'd have to bring a passport here too.
You mean you didn't? Tim?
Yeah, this seems a really good idea, Chair. I think it's obviously limited sum of money across the whole geography, and not huge. So the question of the criteria that are applied to applications for it become very important. And we don't have those criteria here. It would be very interesting to see those, because I'm sure there is a stage of sifting that is behind these papers that I think we can all benefit from, because I think some of our constituent councils do similar things, and learnings from how these things are done in different places is useful.
So, I mean, what we said is open to everybody, but priority be given where you've got problems, particularly with young people, the hotspots, if you like. And although the Cambridgeshire Community Foundation will be doing this, ultimately it'll be the Chief Constable and myself who will tick it off. And we will be looking at whether whatever they propose, we don't know what they propose, if that's likely to help in reducing crime, that's what we want to go for.
So, Chair, can I just follow up? So, do you have some written down success criteria for this programme?
The answer is no. We've got the criteria that we need to be helping youth, and priority ought to go in those difficult areas within the county, but it doesn't exclude anyone else. There are perhaps some good operations that could be in a village, maybe a small amount of money, but the impact it has on that village will be quite substantial. So therefore, it's an open shop at the moment, and I think I'm on a learning curve with this. I'm hoping we'll all be on a learning curve, because if it really is successful, I want to see if we can find a bit more money and up the ante in the following years.
I've got Ben and then Tom.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. If I can ask through you, the Commissioner, and this is relating to the outreach workers that one you've got for the northern part of the county. Would they have any input into this and say, well, actually, there's this little project here that is a good idea. If you gave them £500, £1,000, that would really help them. And if I may lead on to a second question, which I think you probably know what I'm going to ask you, and that is, when is a outreach person coming in the southern part of the county?
First of all, the first part of the question, the idea of giving the Cambridge Community Foundation was to make it arm's length. So otherwise everyone's going to be lobbying like crazy for this. There's a system, you apply, put forward your proposals, and they will sift and bring forward some suggestions as to who might receive that. So it's not going to be driven from within our organisation. It's going to be driving through an independent operation. As far as the outreach worker is concerned, as you know, when we appointed the outreach worker, it was an idea I had. We wanted to see how successful it was before we moved on, because I wanted to move on to the south. I can tell you it's been a runaway success. It really has. And I get so many reports back from councillors, parish councillors and organisations that it is a success. So I'm proposing that we actually put it into our budget. So for April, we hope to get a person involved who will then operate in the southern part of the county, obviously based in Cambridgeshire as a centre. Cambridge as a centre.
I'm very supportive of it, really. I mean, I think for East Cambridgeshire, actually, it has been huge problems. It's probably been the biggest problem, actually, specifically in Surrey. We've had some significant problems of sort of claiming good abuse, who have been running into trouble. So actually, I think my particular district comes quite low down in terms of overall crime stats. It'll be interesting to see where it comes in terms of youth. Because actually, I think we do have quite a few problems there. So it's music to my ears to see this fund being created, and I think hopefully it can go some way to tackling some of those problems in Southern, where I think you've got some very good charities like Certain Action for Youth, who's done some good work with some of the youth there to try and
encourage them to have a look at it.
Yeah.
Those forward, obviously. I'm not exactly a million miles from Surrey myself, so I understand. But I would encourage, if you've got a situation like that, to get a good plan together, good proposal, and submit it.
The youth foundation, community youth foundation, I think the idea looks good. Money is very stretched within the Cambridgeshire. Many people may not have even the chance of sniffing it part and getting into it. Comes with it sometimes with the red tape of if you set up such a high criteria to get £2,000. How would you see a small organisation or small 5 or 6 youngsters getting together and say, look, we think we can do it? But how would they be supported in accessing that 500, 1,000 or whatever? Because that is where I think majority of these small ideas actually go down in the drain. Is so much of the red tape that follows it.
Yeah, we're not anticipating lots of red tape. They would be given the money for a particular project, and obviously take an interest in those projects to make sure they do. But the £2,000 would be a big one. So you can very often find that a youth group, and I've talked to a number, if they had £200 or £300, it would be like a manna from heaven for them. It would enable them to move forward. And it's that all those things we want to do. I mean, looking at Peterborough and the organisation in the town centre, whose name I've forgotten, it's in the old Harbour Massage shop. I mean, Peterborough put some money into that, I put some money into it, and I think it's been an enormous success in giving youngsters a real sort of opportunity to do things for themselves, press forward. So it will depend. Obviously, in Peterborough as a city, it could be a bigger operation than it could be in a village. But they equally is important. And I would like to see lots of small amounts going rather than all the big amounts, but there will be to me, for some people, as possible. As I say, in Peterborough and Cambridge. And what I want to do is ensure that we keep that fund running, so we'll top up 40,000 each year. We may be able to increase on that. I shall certainly be looking closely. If we hold in for, it sometimes happens when you're sort of
Quite a lot of it coming from South these days.
But, so, we're growing this in the same way as we've grown the outreach work in the north. This is going to be grown. I hope we can get more money for it, and I'm hoping that if it's proved successful, we can actually get one or two other organisations, some of the businesses, to actually help us on this, because it would be properly administered. And I say it's open to all. We're not going to target any one person. It's open to all.
Thank you. I've got Martin, Christine, and then Mary. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm very supportive of this, and I go back to some of my examples that I've been involved in as a county councillor again, where we've had some funds, especially as we were reducing youth funds a couple of years ago. We put some funding in place that was there to try and encourage groups to come up with sustainable youth projects, so they'd get some initial capital, some initial investment, on the basis that part of what their bid submissions is that they would have to demonstrate how the projects they were being funded for would become self-sustaining. And there's a couple of things that may be worth learning from that. One is that point about self-sustaining, because that way you won't get the same projects coming back year on year for funding, because you're encouraging them to say, actually, this is how we'll actually make this work for ourselves. And the second one is that we actually involve panels of young people actually in the assessment of those bids, which could be seen as a bit bureaucratic, but actually if the Community Foundation you would have a young people's voice in the assessment, and it would make it much more relevant. So it's just a couple of suggestions that might help you moving forward.
One of the things we have said is that we don't want to fund something that's going to be ongoing. So we're not going to fund wages or anything like that. It's got to be a project which has got to be self-sustainable. And it's not going to be an ongoing thing, following you and have to complete in order to do something else in the same way as everyone else. Because there is that problem. You could go to just 2 or 3 and then take all the money. It's an ongoing thing, particularly when you go on to fund people's salaries.
Yeah.
We're not going to do that. It's got to be a small enough thing. And I mean, there's even some youngsters, or groups of youngsters, who are connected with the schools that apply. There's no reason why they shouldn't. Out of our sort of operation, they've got a good idea on, and they can apply.
Yeah, that's helpful.
I just was going to respond to Councillor Carr's point. That he was asking about the bureaucracy of Cambridgeshire Community Foundation, and I just wanted to endorse them as an organisation for holding the fund. I have applied for a number of small groups I've been involved with. Very simple, straightforward process. And one of the things that is very good about it, which I think brings up the point that's been made about young people applying, is that part of the process is they will know how to talk to people about the project. So it isn't just about young people being able to fill in your forms. So I just wanted to share from my experience that it, that it is an easy process and they are a good organisation.
So the meeting I had with them, I'm just so appreciative of what they're doing, because they are a voluntary organisation, and so impressed with the way they do it. And they are giving advice as well as sort of dishing out money. I'm convinced they're the right people to do it, but as with all these things, you have to see how it develops.
Marion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. 7 years ago, we set up for a young PCSO in Kennedy, started a project with what we call flying football. And for the last 7 years, I, as a councillor, having with that by a community leadership fund, been able to support that at £1,000 a year to make that. So we started with 10 boys. We now have over 100 boys every single week. 52 weeks of the year they play Friday football after school on a Friday evening. It's reduced the crime in Eastbourne dramatically. I'm disappointed disappointed that we will not do ongoing projects because our community leadership fund is going to come to an end. That is quite paramount. We are not going to be able to afford to have that money available to ward councillors to distribute within their ward. Would the Commissioner please consider again that we would not use the money for ongoing projects to reduce crime, which it would?
Yeah, I think we've got to be creative here. We're looking for new ideas. We're looking to pump brine. We're looking to sort of get the voluntary side of things underway. Immediately you lock yourself in, you're taking away a huge amount of the fund that we can't then develop across the rest of the county. And I think, the one thing we made that decision was it's not going to be an ongoing thing. If they've got a new idea, if they're in trouble, they can come and ask. But it's not as of right. We're not going to say we're going to fund that and we're going to get £1,000 every year or whatever the case might be.
It's purely to pay for five-a-side football pitches within the school that they actually operate. And I would like you to consider these kind of organisations that do reduce crime, because Eastward was one of the most crime-ridden areas. 7 years ago, you couldn't dare go into Eastward without you weren't accosted or cars smashed up, and now it just doesn't happen.
But I'm aware a movable feast, and you have problems developing in different parts of the county at different times. And if you lock all the money into one you've started, you then can't go and help others. But the whole idea of this is to support a voluntary operation, to give them the pump priming, give them the necessary to start. Obviously, if we had a great big bit of money, we could do what we wanted, but we haven't. I mean, we're talking about 40,000 a year.
7 years, and now we're obviously looking to other meals, and you're making this fund available, but as you said, it's only for new projects.
That's right.
Which is, I find disappointing, but never mind.
If I had more money, I'd welcome doing what you wanted, but we haven't. I'm sure you've got aware of that in your organisations as well.
Very much. I think on that particular one, we've spent quite a bit of time on that. Obviously, it invokes a lot of positive about that. I know that prevention is always better than cure. I know in local government we quite often look at prevention is cheaper than cure overall as well. It would be interesting to find out how much is actually spent on youth crime across the county, and to see whether some of that money that is spent at the back end of dealing with crime could be switched to the front to actually pump prime some perhaps bigger projects to reduce crime and indeed cost overall.
That's an interesting point, one that we are looking at. The money that we're pushing in to these areas, directly from violence and the police, we've merged that. We're looking at what local authorities are doing. Can we link in with that? Because, if you can target stuff rather than having a scattergun, the more the better. I haven't got the authority to do that, but I can talk. I will be talking. I'm coming down to chat to all the leaders in the coming weeks to look to see whether there are areas where we can work together, and whether different authorities can work together to get them to maximise the effort of trying to keep youngsters out of trouble. Because as you rightly say, Mr. Chairman, it's an investment that I think is invaluable, as we've just been told. The results of the Friday football club, what they've done. I am totally convinced it's a way forward, and I want to put as much effort into it as I possibly can, and doing it with our partners. We're not a unique organisation. We've got the council, we've got the district councils, we've got the parish councils who have a go at this. We want to support them and help in that front.
Okay. Is there a feeling that needs to be scrutinised any further? Key decision point. We'll move on then to 25th of November to approve the signature of Memorandum of Understanding. Which is the bottom of page 9.
Yes, we're moving forward, Mr. Chairman, on collaboration at a reasonable pace now. Hertfordshire and Bedfordshire and ourselves are now committed to this, and we're beginning to see some good results in terms of savings, and also becoming more efficient and being able to deliver better service. It's not just a matter of saving money.
I found this one a bit opaque actually. I don't really understand instantly what operational support and organisational support services are. And I think that's quite critical to what this is about. And the summary also states that there is an attachment, which is the memorandum of understanding itself, and that isn't attached. So I wonder whether she could help us a bit on those things.
Yeah, well, what we're doing, Mr. Chairman, in working together, and it's come about through sort of lots of talks and discussions as to how to best organise the three counties. And we're using a lead force system, so that Bedfordshire are dealing with protection services. They are looking at the actual sort of policing side of things. Cambridgeshire is leading, as you might well imagine, on IT and finance and HR, so we're delivering the organisation support. And Hertfordshire, they are concentrating on some of the sort of high-level organisational support, like call centres and detention centres, custody. And all three will be working to that. We work as a team right across, so you're not sort of having one operation with three centres. It's going to be centred at one place, because that's where you make the savings, obviously. And I have to say that I've been more than impressed that everybody in all three counties picked this up and are running with it. We've actually made savings already this year.
So with this year, we've put together the final parts of our protective services, some of which you had a briefing on, which was the traffic collisions and tickets. And we've already started to work together across areas such as training, where joint training is being delivered, insurance services. We're already part of the 12 Force consortium in purchasing insurance, and Cambridgeshire is working on behalf of the other two counties now to assist in their delivery of that service. So there's already some bits and pieces that have been done that have started to produce savings for all three of us.
The savings are beginning to grow.
They are.
This year we've made
yes, so collaboration savings this year, just over 800,000 in this financial year alone, in terms of protective services delivering, and then a few thousand in those other areas in training and in delivering insurance together. So nearly £1 million in order to balance the budget for this year.
And as we move forward, particularly with Cambridgeshire driving the Metis running to limits across the three, it's going to be absolutely considerable amount of money. It's difficult to put a figure on it, but we're talking sums only 28 million across the three, which is no mean achievement if we can do that. And we're going to continue to drive in that direction. That's what it's all about. But I'm happy to come back with specific reports if that's what you'd like. Happy to give you briefings on where we are. But it's a motor that started, it's beginning to gather momentum.
Thank you very much. Yes, specifically the attached memorandum of understanding.
My apologies, it wasn't. We send through all the different documents and the links, and I think the link was, so it's on our website, and we can make sure that that copy sent.
I'll make sure you get that.
Thank you.
Could we have that sent to the panel?
Absolutely, my apologies, it's absolutely the public domain.
Any other comments? Any further scrutiny required? Okay, the next one, a 3-year free lease with no service charges. That must be a difficult one to agree.
Well, it's not costing us anything, so...
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I was just wondering if you've got any space there. We can
It's pretty small.
It's very small. Oh, well, okay. All right. Any comments on that one? Okay. The Mrs. Business case, which is obviously something close to your heart.
As you know, we've talked about that quite a lot. It's just a progression now.
Yeah.
We're moving to deliver the rest of the software, but there's also a lot of hardware. Already we've got slates being operated in both the Cambridgeshire area and in Peterborough, and it's proving extremely successful. I think the interesting thing is that since we've done this, we've now got the other 2 counties coming in on this, and we've got a number of other really interested in it. So it's something that's going to grow, and we've been talking about this ourselves as to how we can actually reap some rewards on it. I think we will be able to reap some rewards for the fact that it was our idea and we're pushing it.
Certainly.
I'd just like to say I'm a great supporter of the slates. I'll give you an example. I represent a rural area. Some of the rural areas are like Peterborough. And one of our major problems is visibility, because we don't have a PC attached to any of our villages, and we don't have PCSOs attached to villages. But it's just nice with a slate where a police officer can stop the car in the high street, by the shop, somewhere, write up whatever they've been doing. And it's the visibility element that's all important to the villages. It's all about upholding the law rather than law enforcement. And this has been one of the major step forwards we've had over the last couple of years. So thank you.
I mean, it is about more visibility. Giving them this time, and we were saving so much time that we'd go back in and write a report, do it then and there, and carry on with the next business. And of course, the slates eventually will disappear. We'll have smartphones. It will be done on a smartphone. And every officer will be equipped with that. And the amount of paperwork it cuts out is just unbelievable. So we're saving hours, we're saving money, and we're getting more visibility. And I think the one thing I get from the public all the time is they want to see police around, but it isn't police. So I always say he can sit outside, across the coffee, do his report, you can see. That's good.
Excellent. Any other comments?
I've got one other. The drug forfeiture, if that's okay.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we'll take you back to appendix page 15, which is not on the list in the agenda, unfortunately, which is the drugs.
Yeah. What we're doing here is that there is money coming in from drugs forfeiture, and there's a reserve fund there. And and this is operational, but not very much, a piece of that, not big, that we might support, is that we're bringing in a civilian expert on drugs who will be advising the force, but also advising some of our partners outside as to how you could deal with the drug problem, to bring about educational programs, and I think we're doing that in conjunction with University, training people on that front. So what we're trying to do is get on the front foot, looking at ways of dealing with drugs, looking at novel ways of dealing with them, ensuring that people are trained to recognise when drugs are involved and the sort of things they should do. And bearing in mind that's coming from income from sort of forfeiture, we're putting that money against good use. But rather than just dumping it in sort of the general budget, it's been targeted, pinpointed, and I'm a great one at doing this. And this, I think, is a really good investment. And we're already sort of getting people saying, this is fantastic. So if we can drive it on, keep a close look at it, and hopefully it can be expanded.
Yeah, I just want a couple of things. I think you talked about the general purpose, but I think the issue is impact and what the impact you expect to be from that. But I think something else as a plea from me is that there are a lot of people involved in drugs and alcohol type activities around the county, and a lot of that is coordinated through the Drugs and Alcohol Action Team at the County Council. And it's just please making sure that that individual ties into the DAT to make sure the activity stays as coordinated as we can.
As I said, with our partners.
Yeah.
You are a partner.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah. But the other thing is, what's the impact you would expect from this?
Yeah, well, it's got to grow because it's not a lot of money. It is one person. But I think if you've got someone who's very keen on this, is enthusiastic, and I'm sure that enthusiasm is going to come off. But the big thing I think is educating people who are involved in people with drugs. Very keen at the force they to understand what they're doing. But I say there's a lot of other partners that way. And if you feel we're not looking at it enough, say so, because we'll make sure we do.
Yeah, okay.
And here comes someone. Yes, sir. Just very briefly, I think it's sort of sensible of having education on the drugs budget. No matter how we deal with education, so there are people who are bringing in the drug, the big issue. How do you sort of see that? I mean, it's a very serious challenge as a nation. But how would we deal with that? Catching the big boys, if you like, and putting them away at that.
Well, obviously, that is a different operation, very much so, and it is beyond Cambridgeshire. It's a national thing. We are now working not only with 3 counties but regionally, with the regional crime operation. And these people are equipped, as you say, as you put it, deal with the acquired boys, and that links in with the national operation as well. And that is a battle that will go on and on, because the goalposts always move as you stop up one and a new one appears. And so we're relying heavily on what happens nationally on that front. Locally, it's a different matter. Dealing with sort of problems locally is an issue of trying to get people off drugs, trying to stop distribution locally. But the big impact happens when you sort of have a huge board. And I was talking to the national organisation and I'm very impressed by what they were doing. Obviously, they broadcast that, but my goodness, they're beginning to get their finger on the button, and that's what we want.
If I might add a comment, just to reassure you, our contribution to the Eastern Region Serious Organised Crime Unit, which deals with these matters, the contribution from Cambridgeshire is just over £1 million a year. So I think that sort of puts it in context against the 80,000 over 3 years, which is money we have to spend in the direction which we're spending it because the nature of how the money comes to us. So, but it's over £1 million a year.
Okay. Any others on that one? Thank you very much. We'll jump forward again to page 17 of the appendix collaboration agreement.
This is the collaboration section agreement with Joint Protective Services. As I explained to you, each force takes a lead. This particular one is being led by Bedfordshire. And this is the agreement we have for that to go forward. Within that, it's very complicated, Mr. Chairman, as to what we're doing and how we're doing it, but within that as well, there is an element of linking in with Eastern Region. So we've got Essex, Suffolk and Norfolk as well, so coming in on some of this, again, which is being led by Bedfordshire. So we've got a really crack force now looking across the region and dealing with Joint Protective Services. One of the first things that, when this was being put together, Joint Protective Services did, was to take on the investigation of the murders in Peterborough. The trial is still going on. And the way in which that was solved is quite amazing. You sort of track through what they did. The speed in which they got that and got the arrests was unbelievable. We couldn't have done that on our own. We certainly couldn't. But by pooling resources together, that lady was taken off the street pretty badly.
Any comments? Any further scrutiny on that one?
Page 18, Victim Services Grant Funding.
Now, I think this is interesting here, Mr. Chairman, because as has been suggested, I spent time working with the APCC. We punch above our weight, I can assure you that. Cambridgeshire is very much there, getting quite a lot of delivery. And on this, we've taken quite a lead. One of the things that we managed to get is we are running as a pilot for this. We're taking over, as you know, victim support that comes into the Peace and Crime Commissioner's office in October. And I'm delighted that Dorothy took a great interest in this, and I was able to put that forward in getting the operation put together. And so this isn't just money for us. We are doing the pilot, but we're doing the pilot on behalf of the Eastern region, because we're looking to bring victim services as a hub with the Eastern region, but delivery at the coalface, i.e. from they do the obviously through Cambridgeshire or Cambridgeshire or Hertfordshire. But we're being supported by the Ministry of Justice on this, and I think we're one of only 2 or 3 pilots. Right, yes. But we're doing it, we're the only one that's doing it for a region. We're the only one that's doing it as a region. So this is going to put us in a good position, Mr. Chairman, once we take this on board ourselves. Because there's a lot of groundwork going into this at the moment. And we, obviously, my office will be responsible for the delivery of that after October.
That's it. Yeah, on restorative justice, are we talking here about the restorative justice that the police deliver, or are we talking about restorative justice more broadly, such as the community-based approach that we've started in Cambridge? It's quite interesting because they end up looking quite different organisationally. I think the funding demands are quite different.
Yeah, I mean, restorative justice, obviously, is that from the police perspective. And I was quite impressed, very impressed with what we're doing in Cambridge. This is something that we need to sort of latch on to and drive, because I think it's got huge potential. And so that will all come under that. But the driving thing is victims. We have to put victims first. We have something like 36,000 victims a year, if I'm right in saying, and they don't all need to be. But some of them are vulnerable people, need protection. Some people need their hand held for a little while. And the restorative justice side of things can really help victims see things that come to fruition. Being offender, apologies, making up. It's good for both sides. I'm all for it. Like I say, I do like what we're doing in Cambridge, and we're going to look at that very carefully.
Okay, thank you very much. And lastly, on the decisions, lease surrender, Carlton Park Golf Matches.
A matter of simple economy, really, that by releasing the property earlier, we save quite a considerable sum of money over the next 15 months.
Comments? No, thank you very much. So just move down to the bottom of page 10 now. Future decisions taken by the Commissioner. Comments?
Transfer Order 2, Mr. Chairman, is an ongoing thing. As you know, the original setting up of the Peace and Crime Commission was the first phase. The second phase was to look at the organisation station. I have talked to you about what we do with transport to. This is now an ongoing thing. Am I losing you?
No, that's all right.
You lost me.
No, I know where you are, don't worry.
Let's report you back when we get it on that. We will be employing financial director in that. We're pulling in to my office. We've pulled in estates that now comes to my office, not police. And we are doing a lot more on communications in order to communicate with the public, get the stories out, and also to impact on the sort of responses we get back. So we're very keen on doing that. So it's going to be two-way, which is why I employed a new person on that, two-way operation. But the finance director is going to be important as well, because saving money by just knocking things down one way, there's lots of ways of saving money, as I'm sure you know, by tightening up the operation. And it's, after a big operation, £130 million, that's no sort of small operation to handle. It's got to be handled properly. And what we want to do is to make sure we're equipped to do that.
Thank you very much. Any other further comments about that? Thank you.
Just on
Certainly.
yes, on the chief finance officer, we raised the employment status of the previous incumbent of that last year. We're assured that by the time this year came around, we would be able to look at a situation where the chief financial officer was a fully employed position. Tax, national insurance deducted at source, the traditional thing. And I think you said that was what we should expect. Is that implicit in the way you're attacking this at this point?
And they're going to be the director of finance, so they really sit above the whole operation. We are about starting wanting to get it in place for April if we can.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we've dealt with the recommendations on that one. So therefore we'll move to item 6, pages 21 to 22. And this will be Amy report.
Yes, very quick. There's been no complaints received since the last meeting against the Commissioner and his deputy.
Can we have another look? Okay, thank you very much. So, yes,
I do want to not challenge, but just ask a quick question about this, because there is sometimes not receiving complaints, it can be a bit of an issue, because and it's just, have we got a history of no complaints at all, or is that...
I don't know the answer to that question, I can take it away.
We need to think about that, because if there aren't complaints, actually, you would normally expect a few, irrespective of their relevance and whether they're right or wrong complaints or whatever. It's just, if there aren't any, we need to start asking questions about why.
Yeah, I mean, we have had issues. We have shared it.
Yeah.
Would it be that nobody ever complains, but that's the case. But where there's an issue, we have shared it.
Yeah.
Good. Thank you. Item 7, police and crime plan update. Enhanced partnership working 23 to 26.
This, Mr. Chairman, we did discuss with you before. As I said all along, we don't regard the police and crime plan as certain tablets of stone. It needs to be updated and modified. One of the biggest things here is the question of victims and the vulnerable adults, which is now sort of embedded into the police and crime plan. There are one or two other small pieces responding to from the conversations we've had here and at our meetings. We will, of course, be looking at it again. So this is an ongoing thing. We need to revise it. We need to make sure we're up to date. I think possibly the question of defence is something we're going to have to work on still further as we go down there and get some experience. it is covered now in the plan.
If I may say, I mean, it's looking at the best way to report this to you. And basically, we've got quoted page 7. This is the new page 7. So it's whether it would be easy if we send you the link to the plan so you can link across. But that's what we've done. The page 7 has a bit of an assessment results that are through to now updated.
That's critical.
Well, absolutely.
Each member of the panel. Refer back to.
Okay, there's a draft variation to consider within the paper, so we should do that.
Yeah, just by what is an absolute coincidence, I was actually at the Marriott this morning, just doing some fact finding myself and having a look around, and I found it absolutely fascinating, and it's certainly an area of good practice. For me as a county, as a councillor, you can see, what the public expect, which is the public sector working better together on areas of real importance. And I just wondered if you've got any thoughts about how that could be developed further. Developed further. Is there any ideas or suggestions you've got to say, actually, we can incorporate that into this or this? Because I think an area, what I would see as best practice like that, we should build on that as well as dealing with the shortcomings that there are in the public sector.
In terms of working together with partners, one of the reasons I come here to speak to all the group leaders is to look at areas where we've been at. You and I have already had a conversation that not only can we be more effective, but also save money at the same time. But I'm glad you feel this was useful. I must admit, it's very impressive when you talk to people. It's quite impressive, the detail that they've got, and the expertise. It's fantastic.
Absolutely, and it's the detail between health data, county council data, police data, pulling that together when you're dealing with some very, very vulnerable people it is really powerful.
So, I think vulnerable people is a big issue. It's always been a big issue with me. I think, particularly when you're dealing with people who have mental health problems. There are more out there than you actually believe. I've been working very hard with the NHS and Home Office to try to ensure that we have a system whereby those people are protected and they should never, ever, ever be put in a police cell. And that isn't the case. The moment it still happens. So, we've got to work together on that. And I'm pleased that we are beginning to work much more successfully now with the NHS. Meeting the other day with the APCC, where someone, I've been driving this since last January, when suddenly the pennies dropped, if you get a broken leg, you go to the hospital, you don't put it in a police cell, if you've got a mental health problem. What do? You don't put them in a police cell. We've really got to drive that forward, because they are vulnerable people that need protection. And of course you've got vulnerable young people as well, that need special treatment. So that's what it's all about.
Yeah. Thank you. Tim?
Yeah, I welcome this sort of deeper emphasis on vulnerable people suffering from complex and sort of interactive needs. And it's actually mirroring priority that the Cambridge City Community Centre Partnership is adopting as a priority for the next year as well. And so there is the potential for having a dialogue, I think, about that. And in particular, I wonder the detail maybe, but for us in the city of Cambridge, it's a bit difficult to read that you're talking to the county council, unitary authority, and health colleagues, and not actually district councils when they're involved in such matters as we certainly are.
And we're talking to your group as well.
Good. But it would be good that that was reflected in the way you were talking about
take
it as
that,
well.
absolutely. We're doing it, but you ought to actually publish it.
Will you amend that?
Quite happy to.
If I may say that, just thinking of that, we are expecting a report from this panel around this, and that would be very helpful. That's why I'd like to give the report and then respond. So that as a formal variation, you've got an opportunity to comment on this as a panel.
Obviously, I thought this was it.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that there is a written report which will come from this panel to us.
You have some early input.
That would be very helpful. Yes.
But we will change that.
Absolutely.
Just a very quick question on page 24 about the engagement outreach worker. Do you have a plan, either yourself, your deputy, or your outreach worker, to maybe go on the ground to local police panel meetings? Is that one of your objectives? You try to make at least one meeting?
Well, I want the outreach week worker to sort of go further afield. These battles are already there, people are understanding. One of the big things, because obviously we're not just dealing with the cities. I'm sure that the city is terribly important, but I know that outreach worker from the north has done a fantastic amount of work in Peterborough. But we've also got the villages and all the parish councils. This is quite interesting. As I promised at the start, we needed to get to the front line. Parish councils are so important. So too are the voluntary organisations, and so too are the schools, and so too in many cases are elements of industry that we need to talk to and get on side. So what we're doing at the moment, as I said, was to sort of see how it worked, and it worked really well. And we wanted to sort of see if we can transplant that now to the south of the county. And it does involve Nicola, who is actually with us this afternoon, has been working on this at the higher. We have regular meetings, which he reports directly to you. And from that, I've managed to develop a real relationship in Peterborough with the schools, for instance, which is really good. The police are involving themselves, particularly with the academies, and that's got to be good news in terms of the way we take things forward. But we do pick up things from parishes a lot by talking to them. Past, they sort of shrug their shoulders, but we're going along talking to them. And there's a number of issues we've been able to deal with from that. Issues from communities, not just parish councils, but communities within Peterborough, for instance, and within Wisbech. So we're reaching out where we haven't been before. This is the whole idea of it. Rather than just getting someone and locking them into what's already there, trying to break new ground. That's what's exciting.
I fully understand the areas that you cover, but still haven't answered the question. Are you intending to at least have either 1 or 2 meetings of the neighbourhood police panels, either yourself or your outreach? I think that, because that is where your sort of sounding places are, the various other places are.
Yeah, I mean, the police attend those and report back, and certainly with Peterborough, Nicola has been attending this, and that will continue to be the case. To listen in, it's just listening, because the whole idea is to hear what people are saying and report it back. And as I said, it reaches far wider than that, which is why we sort of, parish councils are always left out, and some of the other sort of groups were left out. Neighbourhood Watch, of course, we're very much involved in. So we're going to ensure we sort of link up with as many people as we can. The problem is, of course, there's so many, you can't sort of do everything. But the answer is, yes, but what I'm saying to you, we want to try and reach out further.
David.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, Chair. I represent about 7 villages in my particular ward outside Peterborough. We would dearly love to see the outreach work. As far as I know, not all parish councils have seen it. But I don't think she went to the liaison meeting. I do know the parish councils have written to you on a number of occasions to invite you, and you said you wouldn't be coming. We would just like some contact, please.
Nicola has actually been to one.
What? Which one?
Hello, I've been to town council meeting last night, and I've regularly attended parish council meetings. I've also written to introduce myself and asked if I can attend, and then where I can get contact through local police panel meetings that I've attended, have managed to.
I don't recognise you.
You might not recognise me, but I do also have an email circulation list that I send to all of the parish councillors, city councillors, so every time a press release goes out of the Commission's office, then I send it on to you.
I don't recognise your email either.
Okay, well, I can check the list and
Well, you're a marked man now, so
You're not the first to say that.
Back in this side of the table. I've got Ben and then Nathan.
Yes, sorry, the way this conversation is going is a bit disturbing to me. The way I want to see our outreach worker, and the one that's coming to the south, is rather than attending parish council meeting and police panel meetings where youngsters and youth do not attend, I want them to be out there visiting the youth initiatives and things like that, to engage with the young people and actually see what they want, not what we want, or parish councils or panels, what they actually want. And I think that's important, and that's, for me, the engagement side of things.
that's what we do.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what we do. And we continue to do so.
Good.
As I say, as I mentioned, we don't lock into what's already there, we want to develop. Outreach is the word, to actually get out there and talk to people that don't normally speak to us. What is interesting, we've surveyed on people that actually get involved in the local community. There's such a small number. One of the things we've been looking at is having our presence at some supermarkets. We're looking at this at the moment, which is moving forward. 20% of people in Ireland come in contact with this. Now, in a supermarket, everyone goes. We've got to try and reach the other 80%. Say, we're here, this is what we're doing, we've got a problem, talk to us about it. Cambridgeshire is a pretty big place, and taking it, a piece of the time that we are really developing this so we can talk to people. And as I said on many occasions, we're not pushing messages out so much as bringing the messages back. That's the important thing.
Chair, one way forward might be, I think it's anyhow, maybe a diary from Nicola, where she is and where she can be contacted. I do admit that I received one email from her when she was first appointed, but emails, get into the big boxes and then go away. So maybe a new way forward might be is that if we can have a diary, where she is, how she's doing, and then what panels are where she is, so we can sort of be able to contact her as possible.
I hear what you say, and I'll talk to her.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any others? No other comments? Thank you very much. So we're being asked to, on page 23, to review the draft variation for the police and crime plan and make a report or recommendations. I get the general feeling that there's support for the variation in there, and I would suggest that we make a recommendation taking into account the points that have been raised around the table this afternoon. I think we're very valid. Agreed? Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay, the next one is the precept report 2014-15. You'll have this lovely flow chart that precedes that. Everyone's had one of those, haven't they? Yes, excellent. This is on pages 27 to 44. And I believe the precept report is being run by
Sorry, I was getting confused with flow charts.
All right.
As you are aware, Mr. Chairman of the panel, our main objective.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's just that, so we've got to say, in case you refer to it.
Someone share one?
Is this just what we said?
It's just the process postcards, that's all. And the veto option and the non-process. We got one? Excellent. Right. Go.
I share.
My number one priority, Mr. Chairman, in terms of what we're delivering as a police force, is to ensure that we protect the front line. And various initiatives are taking place on this. But we haven't had an easy budget to sort of balance this year, because there's a funding gap of 4.9 million. As you know, the police department down the top slice in order to fund the IPCC and also the police college as well. And so we were driven to be sort of quite close to not being able to balance the budget. But we balanced it. And I think the thing to say is that we're looking ahead with operators coming on board having hopefully next year an easier job to balance that budget. Investment is being made in order to save money and make ourselves more efficient. But we needed this time to increase the preset below inflation. And obviously there's also the government ceiling, which they've taken an awful long time to decide what it is. So it's a matter of questioning lots of people to find out what we thought it was going to be. And I was quite convinced, even though Dorothy was very worried about this, that it wasn't going to be 2%. But yes.
We received formally now.
Yeah, 2 o'clock today.
13:49, precise.
And I think my antenna must be quite good, because I'm making this decision before Christmas that that is what is going to happen. And so we're now, what we're suggesting is we have a 1.92, which is below inflation. But it does enable us to balance our budget, and it enables us to keep all our frontline officers, because the last thing I wanted to do was to have to reduce those numbers. It wouldn't be good for the force, it wouldn't be good for the safety of Cambridgeshire, and it certainly wouldn't be good news amongst the public, because that is the last thing they want to see. So Brian's been working very hard on this for me, and if you want detailed comments, he's happy to do that. But the basis is we have presented a balanced budget that does include a small increase in the preset, and it does enable us to carry on delivering the service we've been doing, and it also enables us to make the necessary investment on operatives to reduce our costs for next year, and we can hold out the prospect of actually having a much better situation this time next year.
Okay. Open to comments. Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, can I ask the Commissioner and the officers why you didn't consider further accepting the Fools grant and then putting funding in from reserves to balance the roads?
What reserves? We have no. The only money we've got is money for funding Hot Metis, which we've got to do as an investment to reduce costs for next year. The other thing, we do have some reserve which we have to borrow on in case we have a major problem. I mean, we have to bear that in mind. We never know what's around the corner. There's some horrendous thing occurring in Cambridge. We've got to reserve that now. It's not in cash, but it's something we can actually sort of call on borrowings. So we weren't able. I would have done just that if we had money, I'm sure. But I think when we get to next year, we'll be in a different position. We may well have good news for everyone. Let's keep our fingers crossed that what we're doing is going to work. I think it will.
Christine?
Thank you. Last year's round, when you presented the budget, we looked at the community safety partnerships and the funding that, and what you said last year was that you were maintaining the status quo so that you could review that and consider what you were going to do this year. I just wondered, I can't see, maybe it's me, I can't read it, but I can't see where it's clear as to what that is going to, what the situation is with regards to funding partnerships.
Last year we were able to maintain it, but that's, in terms of funding coming from the centre, that no longer exists. So it's no money. During the summer, Brian and I carried out what we call star changes. We sounded pretty horrendous, but it wasn't. It was just talking to everyone to find out what they were doing, how could we help, can we sort of join things up together more ourselves. And the other thing we did was we looked at money that we were putting in and money the force were putting in. Suddenly realised it was both, and we're both coming out of the same pocket, so we needed to bring it all together. We have been talking to our partners, and we've given as much support as we possibly can. A little bit less than last time, because obviously we think pulled down. And the other thing we've, because ECT is a good tool that everyone likes, we're now paying for that. So we haven't paid for that. That's being paid for. Yeah. And I haven't had any real sort of comebacks from partners in what we've done. We're trying to be fair. And where you've got specific requirements, we will be looking at those again next year. And certainly from the youth point of view, how we can support our partners in helping to keep young people out of trouble. That's very important. Supporting partners in dealing with the drug problem, supporting partners in dealing with the drink problem, which is another big problem, which I did have a very interesting seminar on that a little while back. And that's going to move forward, and I think we might be able to help more on that front in due course. So at the moment, that money comes out of our budget. But I've combined a piece as well, so you can see exactly what, if you look at exactly what's going out.
I mean, I guess my question is around the fact that last year there was funding that went to each of the partnerships for them to purchase services for themselves. And my understanding from what you said last year was that you were looking at whether that was a cost-effective way of purchasing services and whether it would be more effective rather than money going to the partnerships to purchase on a more broad. From what you're saying, what you seem to be saying, and I'm just checking my understanding, is that you have decided that that is value for money to give money to the partnerships in that way for them to spend as they see fit.
But we're not leaving it at that, because we are looking to see whether we can join up more and getting partners to work together. That is important. So we're not just sort of saying, forget it, here's the money, go and do it. We are actually tracking that now, and we are going to try to encourage different partners to work together.
So how will we as a panel be able to track that money? It's like showing in the budget line as money that's gone to a partnership. Obviously, some of it will have gone to each of the partnerships. How will we be able to track?
Well, at the moment it goes on there, and I don't want to interfere. But we will actually be looking at that, and that will come out in the next variation to do with the peace and crime plan. But what we're trying to do now is to see whether we can take that a step further and get people working together. Another reason I'm going to talk to all the group leaders is to see can we try and do that? Is there a way through where we can work with each other and save money? But what we've done this year is to give money to partners, and there's no way we're going to sort of have our hands all over it. You've got to make decisions, but we want to now try and help see whether we can, by working together, get better value for money out of it.
Thank you. David and then Tim.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. So Graham, when you were coming to the decision to increase the council tax reset, do you think about sort of affordability and whether people who are living in the county, and in my case particularly Peterborough, would welcome this increase? I'll give you an example. The City Council went through affordability and decided to freeze it. Fire Authority has frozen their reset, and it's just the police that are going to increase theirs by 1.9%. At a recent group meeting, Conservatives at the town hall in Peterborough said, who's had a pay rise of 1.9% recently? And the answer was nobody. And so there's an aspect here of fairness and of affordability, because last year, for example, we had queues and queues of people outside the magistrates' court for not paying council tax for a variety of reasons. But this does have an effect. Some of the things that were being said last week in my group meeting was, what extra are we going to get? And it was quite difficult to explain to councillors where there was no police presence, there was no PCSO presence, except 101, and that didn't work properly anyway. And so there was a definite agreement within the Conservative group that there should be no increase in the precept, mainly because of the effect on public opinion and also on affordability.
I think public opinion wouldn't take too kindly if we hadn't done it. We would reduce by 30 or 40 the number of policemen. And where would we reduce them? It would have impacted on Peterborough, certainly, because you have a large bulk there. And one thing that the public are concerned about is that we have police, we have the front line, we can keep the community safe, that is important. Of course we thought about it, we weren't just sort of plucking a figure out of the air, we were balancing our budget. And we're balancing the budget in order that we had a really top-rate police force that can keep Cambridgeshire safe. And that was the main priority. What I've said to you is we are not just sitting back and accepting that we keep putting our precepts. Next year we're working with what we're doing to reducing costs still further. So we may next year have an opportunity to have a different sort of decision.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things I wanted to start by saying was that I think many of us around the table are also involved in running local authorities, and we experience the same financial pressures as you do supporting the police. So I'm coming from that direct perspective. The significant thing I think that a lot of our public would focus on, maybe apart from the precept issue, is the implication for PCSOs. Because as I read this, there will be